Does the U.S. condemn the assault? And what are you waiting for now in terms of triggering those sanctions on Russia?
Well, as you know, I'm not one of the foreign policy advisors of the president, but at the National Economic Council, we are responsible for making sure that sanctions get enforced and that people that are helping Russia with their war against Ukraine, as for example, India has been doing, but by buying Russian oil, that we're ready to respond to them economically. And the last night's news is very disappointing, and I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of talk today and tomorrow about the level of sanctions and the timing of sanctions.
The timing of additional sanctions
Perhaps, yes.
on Russia.
I mean, it's up to the president in the end, but yes, it's a very disappointing set of affairs.
On the U.S. economy, there were 22,000 jobs added last month. The past 2 months of data were also revised down. You've said in interviews this week it suggests there's less momentum here than you thought. Has job creation stalled, and should the Federal Reserve be concerned about the jobs picture?
Right. Well, first of all, the interesting thing about the jobs numbers, right, is that they had the biggest revisions in 50 years over the summer. And we came in with 22,000 in August. But if you look at what they said in 23 and 24, they have two ways of estimating the jobs. There's something called the payroll survey, where they ask the employers, how many people did you hire? Then they have something called the household survey, where they call up people. They say, do you have a job?
Right.
And over those 2 years, the payroll numbers said that we created 4.5 million jobs. And the household survey said about 2 million fewer, about 2.5 million jobs. And they should have the same answer. And so for August, for example, the payroll survey said 22,000, and the household survey said 288,000. And so I think that what's going on is that these old-fashioned ways of surveying, like I wonder if you've ever gotten a survey in the mail and filled it out and mailed it back in. Maybe you have, but I think that that's the way they're trying to do it. And the reason we're getting these massive revisions and these numbers that don't make sense is really that we've got to modernize the way we do the labor data. But if you look at the non-labor data, second quarter GDP was revised up to 3.3%. The Atlanta Fed's GDP estimate for the third quarter right now is 3%. And so industrial production's at an all-time high.
But you believe all that data? All those models are functioning?
No, the point is when there's dissonance in data, that you have to sort of watch how it all works out.
Got it.
And the thing that I'm most suspicious of right now in terms of data quality is the job number, in part because there are other ways to do it. There's this company called Homebase that does it. Their August number is 150. But again, even think about this. If we ask households how many jobs do they have, it's plus 288,000 in August. If we ask the employers, it's 22,000. Then that becomes a puzzle for economists. Like, what is wrong with the data? And we kind of know what's wrong with the data. What's wrong with the data is people aren't filling out the forms and sending in the surveys.
Because last month, the president fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, suggesting there was political bias, not just what you're talking about, which is a very technical issue on how data is collected and crunched. Did you fix the political bias? Or?
Well, there are patterns in the data that look like political bias, but they could be accidental. And that's why we need to get a new set of eyes in there to make sure that things are more transparent, that we modernize the surveys, and we make them so that more people trust them. But think about this. At the Federal Reserve...
So you don't trust these numbers from Friday,
I think the BLS numbers need to really be improved. They need to be modernized. And I gave a talk at the BLS next to Alan Greenspan a few years ago, where I talked about the necessity of modernizing them. And so I still agree with that position.
But trend line wise, when we hear from companies like Caterpillar, Deere, Ford, Procter & Gamble, that their costs are going up due to tariffs, that doesn't suggest there's going to be robust hiring in those sectors, right? When a company is taking on something that could hurt their productivity or
we've seen
profitability, I should say.
Inflation has come down quite a bit. It was in the high threes when President Trump took office. The average over the 6 months is 1.9. And even the Fed right now clearly agrees that inflation has been under control, if you believe futures markets, because the federal funds futures markets are now saying the Fed's going to cut interest rates 3 times this year. And so the Fed, they're expected to. And so therefore, the Fed is expected to feel like it's comfortable with where inflation is right now.